Hello Wolfpack, we're back here on Bitcoin. Now, before I get into the video, I want to say I'm back from my trip. I haven't looked at the charts a massive amount, but we are doing some very decisive, very interesting things that we need to be taking a look at quickly. Tomorrow, we have the collab coming out with Mega Whale Crypto. The collab tomorrow is going to be extremely interesting because Mega Whale Crypto is a big believer. Well, I wouldn't say he's a big believer, but he's a moderately big believer in the fact that Bitcoin may have already bottomed out. Now, he's not super confident in that. I don't want to misquote him, but he has said on multiple occasions that he's not super confident in that, but he is basing this belief essentially off of this major uptrending line that has been of macro presence on Bitcoin since around 2015. I have many problems with this macro line now. Sorry for that voice crack. I have many problems with this macro line here that I'm going to get into in this video, and I'm going to get into it in tomorrow's collab as well. The collab should be particularly interesting because it might be, you know, it might even turn into a little bit of debate as to whether this line is relevant or not. I personally do not think it is of the utmost importance, and the reason being is because macro lines that are drawn on the logarithmic scale generally do not keep up with time. Actually, it's mathematically impossible for them to keep up with time. They have to be lost eventually, right? They have to be. It's just a simple mathematical law. They have to be lost eventually. All straight lines are drawn on the logarithmic scale have to be lost eventually. So I don't necessarily agree with the premise of this line using that as an example. I'd also say that given the importance of a 200-week SMA, right? We tested it for literally 16 months of Bitcoin's lifespan, right? How many retests of this did we have without dropping below it? Countless retests, right? You know, there's 10 months in 2015. There was 4 months in 2018. There was about a month in 2020, and we recently saw it retested as well. We just lost that. So if we lost that major line, which is undoubtedly way more important than this yellow uptrending line, who's to say we can't lose the uptrending line too? Right? If we've lost that major 16-month-long support line that's, you know, lasted on Bitcoin way before this yellow line even existed, right? About a year before it even existed, who's to say we can't lose that yellow line we've only retested on 3 separate occasions, right? That's my opinion on it. But obviously some people have different opinions. Mega Whale's one of those people. I'm interested to hear what he has to say. I have a vague idea of what he's going to say, and I think it definitely is a line we need to consider. I'm not saying we should discount it entirely because we are bouncing off of it. It's not like it's an invalid line, right? It's definitely valid. We're bouncing off of that line. If we weren't, if it wasn't valid, we wouldn't be bouncing off of it. And so it certainly could act as support, and it is acting as support, and it's definitely seeing some bounces here. But my point is, I think it's unlikely that it will be the defining factor that ends the bull market. Another reason why I think it's unlikely is because, generally speaking, in a bull market, you actually see some consolidation on the macro bottom, right? So if this is the macro bottom, where's the consolidation going to come into it, right? Because we can't actually go sideways around this line because we'll just end up going upwards. We'll have to go upwards with the line eventually, so that's hard to explain, but essentially, if we go sideways, all of a sudden we've dropped through the line, right? So we have to actually just kind of have some sort of V-shaped recovery, which isn't typical of Bitcoin. Bitcoin doesn't generally see V-shaped recoveries. And so there's a lot of assumptions with this line that I don't like, but I'm not willing to make as of yet. Now, I very well understand the chance that it could, in fact, form the macro bottom. But when you're talking about the macro bottom of Bitcoin, you're kind of using 2 assumptions, right? The one assumption is Bitcoin's going to depeg from the traditional markets, which I think is incorrect, right? And the other assumption is it's kind of either or. The other kind of opinion is Bitcoin is going to the traditional market's going to bottom out. So there's the two possibilities you have for saying Bitcoin's bottomed out right now. So let me just backtrack here. If you think that Bitcoin has bottomed out now, if you think the bottom is in for Bitcoin, you are saying either 1, Bitcoin is going to depeg from the traditional markets, which are falling like a rock, or 2, the bottom is in for traditional markets, and hence the bottom is in for Bitcoin, right? If we look at the traditional markets, we look at the S&P 500, we can see very clearly, right? Not only through interest rates, not only through inflation, that's very clear, right? If you don't know anything about that, I don't know what you're doing in the market at this point, right? Inflation is out of control. Interest rates are hiking massively. The market is dropping because interest rates are hiking, right? And we're expecting many more interest rate hikes to come. And so we should be assuming the market is going to drop more. But also the fractal taken directly from a 2008 stock market crash, which is actually a very similar recession to what we're seeing right now in terms of price action, applied right on top, is insanely familiar, right? That fractal is playing out perfectly, and we're just seeing, apparently, according to this fractal, the last legs of the fractal start to play out. And according to the fractal, again, And we should be seeing a $2,600 to $3,000 S&P 500 between August and October, with 1 month of room for error, right? So all of this is a long way of saying the S&P 500 and the broader stock market is probably not near bottoming out yet. At least, at the very minimum, a few more months of correcting to go. On the longest term time frame, it could be up to 6 months, but at the very minimum, between August and October is when it's going to be bottoming out. So it's not done yet, and the rate hikes are not done yet. There's no reason to believe it's going to be done yet unless something drastic happens. And with that said, you know, given the fact that Bitcoin is heavily connected to this market, to the stock market, you know, obviously the Bitcoin bottom is probably not in yet, right? And again, I'm not dissing Mega Crypto. I'm very, very, very sure that he understands that. And that's why he's not fully confident in this prediction. But there are a lot of people out there that I'm talking about more blatantly who don't understand that correlation, who seem to just kind of refute its existence. And it's simply irrational. I mean, it's simply absurd. I mean, there's no other way to talk about it, right? If you think the Bitcoin bottom is in, you are saying either one, Bitcoin is depegging from traditional markets, which you have zero evidence for. Yes, you could technically be correct, but the point is you have no evidence to suggest that. And two, that the SPX is bottoming out, in which case I would argue you have absolutely no understanding of what the stock market does and how it reacts to interest rates hiking and inflation, right? So both of those assumptions, which are the only assumptions you can make about Bitcoin bottoming out, are incorrect, and hence assuming Bitcoin bottoms out here is incorrect, right? I would say that it is more likely at this point, and I could be eating my words in a few months, and I could be wishing I never said this, but I'm going to stick to the data, because the data is saying at this point, it's way more likely that Bitcoin has not bottomed out yet. That's just the data from the SPX. That's just the data from what I see as normal from the macro trend. But if we're looking at the data from something like, you know, the 4-year cycle theory, which is the most important macro trend you're going to find on Bitcoin, it's a date range trend based on the halving that is pointing to November, or at least Q4 this year, as the bottom for Bitcoin, right? So not only does, you know, the price action as per this one macro line tell us the bottom's probably not in, not only does, you know, the SPX correlation tell us the bottom's not in, not only does something like Bitcoin dominance tell us that the bottom is not in, you know, the 4-year cycle itself is telling us the bottom's not in, right? So I'm really struggling to understand how anyone could possibly think the bottom is in at this point. Now, I do understand that people think that there's great macro buying opportunities in this price region. They wouldn't be wrong to assume that. But I have done a video in the past about how I kind of don't like the idea too much. I don't, you know, it's not something I hate. I don't necessarily like the idea of DCAing and hoping for the best. I do, however, like the idea of buying towards where you think will be the bottom, but more importantly and more majorly, buying at the trend reversal. Okay, because I think that, yes, everyone will agree, it's very, very difficult to catch the bottom on any market, right? Especially Bitcoin, very volatile. You know, it's very unlikely, you know, and this is even me saying this myself, it's very unlikely that we will actually catch and buy the bottom. It's unlikely. It's not likely, right? What is very likely is that we will catch the trend reversal, because there are objective points in which the price needs to meet for us to catch that trend reversal. And once those price points are met, then we can just buy in, right? Trend reversals are much more you know, are much more easier to identify than the bottoms. They're also much lower risk. They're lower reward, yes, that's of course, but risk is way more important, because we have to remember we're in a very volatile market. We're in a market that literally has gone down. The major asset, the most important asset in the market, Bitcoin, has gone down 70% in 7 months. Okay, you know, name another you know, asset class that does that, and then go ahead and try to call that a low risk asset. It's not a low risk asset. It's extremely high risk. And so given the fact it's extremely high risk, waiting for a trend reversal is the way in which we can reduce that risk to a level of which is bearable. Okay. Now, if you want high risk, go ahead, go and trade all day. Right? I'm a trader. I personally trade altcoins. I trade all this stuff. I don't really care what happens to Bitcoin. Right? Because I don't make my money through Bitcoin. I make my money through altcoin trading. The only reason I care about Bitcoin is because, you know, to a certain extent, is because in order to understand where altcoins are going, you need to understand where Bitcoin's going. Okay, so that's why I care about Bitcoin. But ultimately, you know, whether I catch the Bitcoin bottom or not is completely irrelevant to me because I'm not trying to catch the Bitcoin bottom. I'm not trying to buy Bitcoin at the bottom, really. I'm trying to, you know, buy altcoins and try and take advantage of those swings on altcoins. So it's not really relevant to the style of trading that I do. But obviously I have audience who are interested in that kind of thing. And so I'm going to try my best to do it for my audience. And what I can say about Bitcoin is if I had to guess where the bottom will be, and people are well aware of this right now, if I had to guess where the bottom will be on Bitcoin, I would say the two most likely places that Bitcoin will bottom out is either, so the 200-week SMA is lost, right? I don't think that's going to work out. It's already been lost. We've already closed a weekly candle below it. We've actually had it acting as resistance in recent days as well. It's gone. The two most likely places for the bottom to be, in my opinion, will be either the 300-week SMA, okay? That's one of the most likely places, which could actually line up with this macro trend line, this yellow macro trend line, okay? Could do, who knows? We could wick down and bounce off the macro trend line. I'm not opposed to that. And so when I talked about the macro trend line before, this yellow macro trend line that Mega Crypto talks about, I'm not trying to completely disprove it. I'm pointing out some errors that I have with it and some errors that would make me think maybe it's not the be all end all. Maybe this actually isn't bottom, right? That would be scenario one. That would be my more optimistic scenario, right? My main scenario, my most likely scenario, what I think the bottom will be and where I think the bottom will be on Bitcoin is actually, as seen on this one-day chart, between 13.5K and 11.5K. And the reason being is because that's the next major, I should say, support zone. If you're zooming back from 2017, you can see that acting as support resistance throughout the entirety of that bull market and throughout the entirety of the bear market. If you look at something like the volume profile, you can see we have that massive spike in the volume profile just after just succeeding that 11.5K support region. And so that to me seems to be the most likely bottom of Bitcoin. However, I have made it very clear to my audience on multiple occasions that I'm not entirely sure where the bottom's going to be. And I don't really care where the bottom is, because what I do know is that I won't be buying the majority of my Bitcoin at the bottom. I will be buying the majority of my Bitcoin, just based off that, I mean. I will be buying the majority of my Bitcoin either at when the 50-week SMA is crossed, which is the major macro indicator for a trend reversal on Bitcoin. All you need to do is zoom back at the price action to know that, right? When we break above the 50-week SMA, the red line, I will buy the majority of my Bitcoin for my long-term hold, right? And what I also do know is that I won't be buying Bitcoin at the supposed bottom until inflation has clearly topped out. Because what we can see is that the S&P 500, the SP 500, right? I haven't actually listed out on this chart, but I can just tell you right now, and you guys can go fact check me if you want to. The only time the S&P 500 bottoms out during a massive correction is when, and on the exact day, that inflation in the United States of America tops out. Okay, and so I would need evidence for inflation topping out in order for me to buy Bitcoin, because obviously if the SPX is not bottomed out, Bitcoin's not bottomed out, and hence we can't assume the Bitcoin bottoms in, right? So that's kind of the two scenarios I'm looking at. Yeah, I'm going to try and catch the bottom, right? If I think the bottom is in based off speculation, I'm going to put in, say, 20% of my portfolio in Bitcoin. But more importantly, I'm going to buy the rest, 80%, at the trend reversal, which would be confirmed by 1, a break above the 50-week SMA, and 2, a SPX bottom, which would be confirmed in itself by inflation topping out. I don't want to overcomplicate it. It's very complicated as it is. I feel like this video is very complicated, and I'm sorry about that. But I'm just trying to make it as simple as possible. The reality is it's not a simple topic. So if you're struggling to understand what I'm saying here, 1, it could be that I'm just terrible at articulating myself. That's definitely a possibility. I'm very tired, just got back from a trip. But 2, and more likely, you know, which is interesting for me to say that, what's more likely is that you simply just don't understand the data, and you should be more intricate in educating yourself about the data. All right. And so with all that said, let's look into the shorter term for Bitcoin, right? So, you know, the first thing I want to talk about, and this kind of shorter term, is that we have 3 days on Bitcoin, 3 days into the next weekly candle close, and hence we have 3 days to get back above the 200-week SMA. Now, as I said, we haven't really lost the 200-week SMA before on Bitcoin. Throughout the entirety of the price action, we haven't really lost it. And so closing below it here is kind of a once-in-a-lifetime thing. Now, we have closed below it before, but we haven't closed so decisively below it like we've done now. And so in order for this drop below it to be listed a fake out, we would need to be getting above 22.4K within the next 3 days and closing that weekly candle above it. I personally don't think that's going to happen, but let's see. It might happen, but you know, let's see. I mean, this chart I'm about to look at is going to basically tell you what's likely here. What we do have on Bitcoin that I'm looking at mainly in this pink structure is actually a bearish pennant formation. Okay, and this is a bearish charting formation that essentially kind of predicts the price is going to go down. However, given how far we've corrected without any, extensive consolidation or bounces, we could actually say this will bounce to the upside as well. Let's look at both scenarios, right? So scenario one, just taking a measured move in this yellow line and applying it to potential breakout point, would be that we see a dead cat bounce up to the top of the larger descending channel, which is, I see that as actually likely to happen at some point, right? We are in a longer term descending channel formation. This is typically a bullish formation. At the very least, it would suggest we bounce back up to the top of it. I've talked about this extensively in the past. This is just a quick reminder to you guys who might not remember. I think at some point we'll be seeing a bounce on Bitcoin, possibly all the way up to, say, I don't know, 23.8K would be a logical target. And so if this pennant breaks to the upside, this is going back on what I said before. If this pennant breaks to the upside, we could actually see Bitcoin reach 23.8K and hence get back above the 200-week SMA before the weekly close, which would overcomplicate things beyond comprehension, right? So I hope that doesn't happen. But ultimately, what we need to be knowing about the short term right now is that we have a bearish pennant formation. We're at the bottom of a channel as well, which complicates it a bit more. But ultimately, we're going to be seeing a breakout on Bitcoin within the next basically 36 hours. And that breakout will either take us up to 23.8K or down to a retest 17K or around that region, which is where the low was that we put in recently about last week, right? So very important breakout coming within the next 36 hours. On the shorter term, we'll be keeping an eye on that. And no doubt, if it's happened by tomorrow, we'll be talking about it tomorrow in tomorrow's video collab with Mega Crypto. But a lot to look at in the short term. I've covered, mostly in this video, I've looked at the longer term because I think the longer term is more important. I think that regardless of what happens here in the short term, so long as we remain below this red resistance box, which is the top being at, around 33K, the bottom being around 28.6K, mainly 28.6K. So long as we remain below 28.6K, I think that nothing really changes on a longer term basis on Bitcoin. And so I think the shorter term is a little bit more relevant. I think the longer term is what we should be looking at. We should be looking at questions, the big questions like when will we bottom out? Have we bottomed out? And I think that I've answered those to the best of my ability in this video. I've given you guys a rough guideline. 11.5K to 13.5K in Q4 would be my best guess. But I'm also acknowledging, and this is very important, that the data is not very plentiful, right? The data is not very plentiful at all. And so it's just a rough estimation. But without further ado, let's look at some things before we end the video. So first and foremost, we're looking at Wolves Crypto VIP. If you want more from the Wolves Crypto YouTube channel, you can go to my YouTube channel homepage and click the join button, through which you'll be taken to this page where you see all the perks you get for joining Wolves Crypto VIP and also the cost, which is right there. And what we can see is you get one high quality altcoin trading signal every second day, which have paid off massively in the past, especially during that drop of our short positions. Prioritized reply to comments, which will become incredibly useful as the channel grows, and I won't be able to get back to all the comments, which I actually can't do at this point. 2-hour video on market psychology, commonly referred to as the most important video I've ever made in terms of education. And this is very important, this is very new, access to my personal trading view charts, so you can bring up the charts that I'm looking at and monitor them in your personal time, right? Those are very important. In addition to that, you get custom emojis and a loyalty badge next to your name to show off kind of your honor as being part of the VIP membership there. So that's Wolves Crypto VIP. Go ahead and join up if you're interested in that kind of thing. We actually use the BitGet Exchange on Wolves Crypto VIP. And even to people who aren't VIP members, I still highly recommend you use this exchange. It is my favorite exchange at this point in time. I use this alongside Binance. Binance I mainly use for spot trades, and then BitGet I use for futures trading. And so we use futures on BitGet with the VIP group, and everyone who's in the VIP group should definitely use my referral link to sign up there. And anyone who's not in the VIP group, you can still use it, right? Half the fees of Binance, non-KYC, good for tax purposes, and good also for avoiding regulation in your country. I know Australia has some pretty harsh regulation around futures. Binance, for example, doesn't offer futures trading to Australian citizens. BitGet still does, and so there's multiple reasons to still be using BitGet over Binance per se. And so if you're interested in that, you can get over $4,000 in rewards by completing a few tasks if you sign up using my referral link. So go ahead and check that out in the pinned comment below. Sign up using my referral link to support the channel as well. And then on top of all of this, the Become a Trader, a 10-unit course. This is the Crypto Academy, right? So myself and Mega Crypto, who I talked about a lot in this video and the start of this video, have created a Become a Trader course, which is essentially teaching people how to trade, teaching people TA, teaching people how to find trades, teaching people what different indicators mean, what different price points mean, etc., how to identify support and resistance, everything you need to know about trading. This will take you from a level in which basically you don't know anything about money in general to a level in which you're a competent trader in about 40 hours, over about 450 slides, over about 85 videos, high quality videos made by myself and Mega Well Crypto. And you can go ahead and find out more on our website. And you can also chuck us an email here at cryptoacademycourses@gmail.com, and we'll get back to you with extensive information about the course, what it looks like, and also the relevant payment information. Thanks for watching, guys. Glad to be back. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you in the next video tomorrow. Video collab with Mega Well Crypto. Cheers.